Up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the U.S.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of.
A place where news becomes an engaged.
Imagine a world where owning your dream asset is just a click away, where wealth is no longer exclusive to the few. Tokenization, the game changer, transforming assets into digital opportunities. A revolutionary technology opening doors to a new era of investment. Don't miss Token Money Magnet, a bold initiative by Kalp Foundation. Only on WION World is One.
Vielleicht nur als 5%. It's the 16th of April and you are watching Race to Power on WION World is One. Thank you for joining us. I'm Eric Njoka. It's not even been 100 days and it already feels like US President Donald Trump has served half of his term, considering the events that have happened ever since he began his role in January. Trump is unperturbed and undeterred even after rumbling the world and his citizens. We'll talk about that shortly. And in Canada, the election wheel has been set in motion with the prime ministerial candidates Mark Carney, Pierre Poilievre, Jagmeet Singh and Yves-François Blanchet squaring it off in the French language debate. Welcome to the show. Donald Trump is still 2 weeks short of completing 100 days as a US president, but in less than 3 months, lawsuits have piled up, protests at a common site, sensitive information has been mistakenly leaked to a journalist, while leaders are scrambling for meetings. The markets are facing uncertainty, and talks on 2 ongoing wars are still uncertain. Has Trump bitten off more than he can chew? Much has happened in the last 24 hours alone. The US has decided to increase tariffs on China to 245%. This comes after China asked its airlines to suspend orders for jets from the American giant Boeing. There's no clarity on when the two sides will come to the negotiation table, and the White House remains steadfast that it is China that has to make a deal with the US, and not the other way around. And while the tensions remain high between the two superpowers, Japan's delegation is on a US visit to negotiate the reciprocal tariffs that Trump first implemented on April 2nd and halted for 90 days to allow countries to make deals. But within the last 2 weeks, markets have witnessed a bloodbath, and economists are projecting a recession for the United States. That was trade. Let's now come to the wars that Trump promised to stop. In the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, talks are still at very early stages for a proposed ceasefire. Just last week, US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff was in Moscow to meet top Russian leadership and Putin. While the president says that Russia is open to peace, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has said reaching an agreement will not be easy. On the other hand, Ukraine says it has made inroads with the US on the rare earth minerals deal, but there's still no clarity on when the agreement will be signed. Let's move on to the other war, the Israel-Hamas war, which is getting both sides to agree on a truce deal, has been a challenging issue for the US. Days after Witkoff said Washington was very close to secure the release of hostages, Hamas rejected a proposal sent by Israel via mediators. Then there is an impasse with Iran. Both Washington and Tehran have made big statements on what they will and will not negotiate during the nuclear talks. These were international issues. Let's now talk about domestic issues. There are over 70 active lawsuits against Trump and his administration. A federal judge has rebuked Trump over the return of a migrant wrongly deported to El Salvador. The judge has said there is no evidence that the Trump administration tried to secure Kilmar Abrego Garcia's return.
Bring Kilmar home! Bring Kilmar home! Bring Kilmar home! They try to separate us!
Before the hearing, dozens of protesters outside the courthouse chanted, "Bring Kilmar home," as they listened to his wife urge the US and El Salvador to return him. The Trump administration previously admitted that Abrego Garcia was deported to El Salvador due to an administrative error. The president was ordered to facilitate his return, an order upheld by the Supreme Court. But his government has not yet asked El Salvador to return him. And to top it all, the US president has gone on a tirade against Harvard University for rejecting to follow administration's orders that aim at restricting activism on campus premises. Trump's administration has frozen grants worth $2.2 billion and contracts worth $60 million. Donald Trump himself called for Harvard University to be taxed like a political entity and referred to the institution as a joke on his social media platform Truth Social. When Trump was inaugurated as president, he promised to end the wars within 100 days and sweeping reforms that will make America great again. With 14 days left to go to the deadline, the question is, can he? Mr. Lincoln Mitchell is a political analyst and professor in School of International and Public Affairs at Columbia University. Professor Mitchell is now joining us live from New York. Professor, thank you very much for making time for us, and it's good to see you again. Why don't we start with the threat issued by Trump after threatening to strip Harvard University of its tax-exempt starters and demanding an apology? The president traded his guns to your university, Columbia, and now both presidents of the universities have rejected what they call unlawful demands. Your reaction, and what do you make of this?
Well, he actually started with Columbia, then went to Harvard, then came back to Columbia. So we've been in the crossfire at Columbia for some time now. I think we have to be very clear. The best American universities, and if I may be immodest enough to include Columbia in that group, but also Harvard, the University of Michigan, University of California system, has been a source of tremendous economic strength, political strength, cultural strength and development in the United States. And Trump is trying to destroy those universities. Mm-hmm. And he is using this issue of anti-Semitism, which is a real issue on college campuses, but also a real issue within the Trump administration to do it. And in doing that, he is kind of leaning into the oldest anti-Semitic tropes, blaming the Jews, mobilizing anger against the Jews. But he is doing this because he wants to destroy the universities. And frankly, the only reason to destroy American universities is if you want to destroy the United States of America. Mm. And if Xi Jinping or Vladimir Putin came up with a 10-point plan, how do we destroy the U.S.? They would say, let's destroy the universities. It might not be first or second on that list, but it'd be in the top 10.
Mm-hmm. Professor, let me then ask you this. There has happened yet the president, the 100 days has not, happened, and the president
yes.
has not even completed his 100 days. So in your view, do you think Trump has bitten off more than he can chew? And how does the future of America under his leadership look like? 4 years now look like it's an eternity.
It certainly does. And generally speaking, the way the kind of timeline of presidential politics works in the United States, you always want to do as much as you can as early as you can. So from that purely tactical perspective, what he's doing here is kind of conventional. You front load all of your important legislation, your policies. The difference is his policies are just so outside of the mainstream of American political life before him and so damaging to the United States. And this question of how can we survive 4 years of this, that's a very serious question to which there is no easy answer. But it is hard to imagine the United States on, let's say, January 1st of 2029 looking anything like the United States did on January 1st of 2025. And the damage will be devastating. It already has been devastating, and it will take a very, very long time to recover. Once the world sees the United States go through this, as the world is seeing right now, it knows that the United States, it thought it understood as this island of stability, this most stable, safest place to go, to put your money, to have your civil liberties. That United States doesn't exist anymore, and that is very bad for the United States globally, and it is very bad for Americans as we go through our lives every day.
Professor, very quickly, and I know we are out of time, but very quickly, I just want to get to know from you, what's the end game for Donald Trump at this juncture?
The end game for Donald Trump is to find a way to stay in power for the rest of his life. And that is what he intends to do. And one of the things that has not been covered much is the executive order on elections, which was signed on March 25th of just recently. And that will do real damage to free and fair elections in the United States. This is a regime that is not going to leave power simply because they lose an election, and is unlikely going to allow that to happen because they will begin to undermine free and fair elections here in the U.S. That's the end game. There's no world for Donald Trump out of power because he knows that will lead straight to federal prison.
All right. Professor, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much for your time and for talking to us today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
The U.S. Department of Defense is under the lens for alleged leak of department information as part of an ongoing probe. Pentagon has put the Defense Secretary's top advisor and Deputy Chief of Staff on leave. The action against the two key officials comes less than a month after a probe order. On March 21st, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's Chief of Staff signed a memo requesting an investigation into the leaks. Less than a month later, security escorted one of Hegseth's advisor, Dan Caldwell, out of the Pentagon on Tuesday. Officials also suspended Deputy Chief of Staff Darren Selnick. It remains unclear exactly what kind of information leak both officials have been suspended for, nor is it clear who the information was leaked to, a journalist or someone else. One of the two officials is also linked to the infamous Houthi war chat leak. Now, Hegseth's advisor, Caldwell, was designated as the U.S. Defense Secretary's point person in the Signal messaging chat that top Trump administration officials used to discuss plans for a military strike against Houthi militants in Yemen. The chart came to light because Jeffrey Goldberg, editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, was inadvertently added to the group. Goldberg made the chart public on March 24th, 9 days after the first strike on Yemen's Houthis, and 3 days after a memo was written to investigate chart leaks. Now, according to the memo, the leaks under investigation include military operational plans for the Panama Canal, a second carrier headed to the Red Sea, Elon Musk's controversial visit to the Pentagon, and pausing the collection of intelligence to Ukraine. In recent weeks, the Trump administration and the Pentagon have aggressively pursued leak investigations. In addition to the memo, Hegseth's Chief of Staff, Joe Kasper, also indicated that the Pentagon will begin polygraph tests on senior officials.
We, along with Panama, are pushing them out, sir. And so we had a very successful.
And for the latest, our correspondent Susan Teherani has sent us this report from New York.
Two senior Pentagon officials have been placed on administrative leave following an internal investigation into unauthorized leaks. Dan Caldwell, a senior advisor to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, was reportedly escorted out of the building. Another individual, the Deputy Chief of Staff, has also been placed on leave. Now, the probe comes and follows concerns over classified disclosures, including those leaks in that Signal group that talked about preparations for a U.S. military strike in Yemen. That chat, tied to the Trump administration, mistakenly included a journalist, which prompted this internal investigation. Now, the investigation is ongoing. It is, as I mentioned, being internally conducted by the Defense Department. More investigations may be underway. Susan Terfani reporting from New York for WION World is One.
Let's move to Canada. It is a critical day for Canada's voters and contesting party leaders. In a few hours from now, Canada's leadership will face off in the first of two televised debates. The one today will be in French. 5 party leaders will debate each other twice this week. Today's debate has been rescheduled to avoid a clash with the Montreal Canadiens hockey game. The Leaders Debates Commission say the debate will now start 2 hours earlier at 6 p.m. local time to recognize Canadians' passion for hockey. The debate comes just days ahead of a critical election on April 28th. Let's now take a look at the 5 leaders under the spotlight today. First up, Prime Minister and leader of Liberal Party, Mark Carney, an economist by profession. Carney has served as a governor of Bank of Canada and head of Bank of England. Before turning to a political career, Carney succeeded Justin Trudeau after the latter stepped down amid growing criticism. Mark Carney is contesting elections for the first time, making this his first debate. Next up is Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the opposition and head of the Conservative Party. Poilievre has witnessed a rise in popularity during Justin Trudeau's tenure, but was quickly overtaken by Carney in the last 2 months. Poilievre is a seasoned politician, but this will also be his first debate as a prime ministerial candidate and party head. Next, we have Jagmeet Singh, head of the New Democratic Party. Singh is the first ethnic minority politician to head a party. He has a legal background and served as the provincial Ontario legislator before joining NDP. Jagmeet Singh's party had lent support to Justin Trudeau's Liberal government, but withdrew support late last year over differences in opinion. The last 2 candidates are Yves-François Blanchet of Bloc Québécois and Jonathan Pednenault of Canada's Green Party. All 5 leaders will be debating in French first and then in English on April 17th. The debate is said to focus on several election issues, particularly the looming tariff threat from the United States. The 25% tariff hit on Canada's auto sector has also been a major talking point. Ottawa slapped a retaliatory tariff on US of the same rate, but many fear the ripple effect of increased prices during a time when a cost of living crisis is already impacting Canada. Tariff and trade tensions are affecting bilateral relations beyond the shores of America. In a fresh development, trade differences are coming to a head between India and Bangladesh in South Asia. The Bangladesh government has closed 3 land ports with India. The Yunus government has banned yarn imports from India as well. Yarn is the most important raw material for Bangladesh's booming textile industry. Cheap Indian yarn effectively rules the Bangladeshi garment industry, but with the ban on Indian yarn, the Bangladesh industry will now have to turn to domestic suppliers. Dhaka's decision follows India's move to suspend transnational shipment facility given to Bangladeshi exports to other countries. India External Affairs Ministry cited logistical challenges behind its decision. India's decision has sent shockwaves in Bangladesh's garment industry. Dhaka depends on Indian infrastructure for a third of its trade, and manufacturers are requesting the Indian government to retract its decision. Bangladesh is struggling to emerge out of political turmoil, even as it awaits a democratically elected government. But if economic conditions worsen, it can only signal a fresh crisis in Bangladesh. Sudan's paramilitary rapid support forces led by Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo has announced a new rival government. It has thrown a direct challenge to the army-backed administration with whom it is fighting for the last 2 years. The civil war has claimed the lives of tens of thousands of people while displacing 13 million people. Making the announcement on Telegram, Dagalo declared the establishment of the Government of Peace and Unity, a broad coalition aimed at representing Sudan's true face. This comes after the RSF and its allies signed a charter in Kenya in February, declaring a Government of Peace and Unity in areas they control. Now, according to Dagalo, the RSF signed a transnational and transitional constitution with civil and political forces. This constitution outlines a roadmap for New Sudan, featuring a 15-member presidential council representing all regions to symbolize voluntary unity. Analysts are warning that this move could lead to Sudan's permanent splintering, given the country's already dire situation. Satellite imagery showed devastating scenes of destruction and humanitarian crisis in Sudan's North Darfur region. Here, the Rapid Support Forces reportedly seized control of the Zamzam camp for displaced people after a 4-day assault that left hundreds of people dead or even wounded. While the G7 nations have called for an immediate ceasefire, urging both sides to engage in meaningful negotiations or talk, the United Nations has labeled the conflict the world's worst humanitarian crisis, with no signs of peace in sight.
Sudan remains a highest priority for the United Nations. The Secretary General will continue to engage with regional leaders on means to enhance our collective efforts for peace. This will complement the ongoing work of the Secretary General's personal envoy, Ramtam Lamamra, who will seek to ensure international mediation efforts are mutually reinforcing. We must renew our focus on finding an end to this brutal war. The world must not forget the people of Sudan.
Sudan's economy is on the brink of collapse due to the ongoing conflict. The country's GDP is projected to contract significantly, with a reported 40% contraction in overall GDP, severely affecting the agricultural, industrial and mining sectors. The financial system is also in shambles, with over 70% of bank branches closed and financial assets shrinking by about a half. The conflict has led to soaring inflation rates, with food prices 2 to 3 times higher than pre-war levels. The Sudanese pound has depreciated over 400% against the US dollar, further exacerbating the economic crisis.
The financial system in Western Sudan is separated from other regions. This is a very dangerous phenomenon. It is a heavy blow to Sudan's economy because the Western Darfur and Kordofan regions are rich in resources. They are indispensable to the national economy.
And for the latest in what is happening in Sudan, let's hear it from our correspondent Louisa Olaniyi, who reports from Lagos.
A charter signed by Rapid Support Forces and its allies in Nairobi in February, laying out their intention to form an alternative authority in Sudan, has materialized as the RSF leader Mohamed Hamdan Dagalo declared a rival government on Tuesday, directly challenging the authority of Sudan's military-led administration. From a stronghold in Darfur, Dagalo claims his new government will represent all Sudanese and restore democracy, a message sharply criticized by the military leadership in Khartoum, which accuses him of fueling division and violence. With millions displaced, peace talks faltering and both sides claiming legitimacy, Sudan's future hangs in the balance, caught between two governments and one shattered nation with millions displaced. From Lagos, Nigeria, Louisa Olaniyi reporting for WION The World is One.
India's Supreme Court today started hearings on multiple petitions challenging the constitutional validity of the WAF Amendment Act 2025, the contentious law that brings in changes to the management of WAF properties in India and has set off a political, social and legal storm. The Supreme Court has proposed to pass an order that properties declared as WAF, including WAF by user, will not be denotified. A bench comprising the Chief Justice of India and 2 Supreme Court judges asked the Solicitor General appearing for the centre on how WAF by user can be disallowed as many will not have requisite documents to get such WAFs registered. The Centre has opposed the proposed order and sought a hearing. A total of 73 petitions have been listed in the Apex Court, including those filed by prominent political figures and organizations. These include ones by a meme leader, Asaduddin Owaisi, Congress Member of Parliament Mohammed Jawed, and Jamiat Ulama-e-Hind. The primary argument is that the law violates fundamental rights and is an attempt to seize properties. Senior advocate for the petitioners, Kapil Sibol, said, and I quote, "A collector is designated to decide whether a property is WAF or not. If there is dispute, this person is part of the government and is so a judge or thus a judge in his own cause. This is per se unconstitutional." The act has sparked widespread protests and objections across the country. Three of the biggest concerns raised include: 1. Inclusion of non-Muslim members on WAF boards that some believe undermines religious autonomy. The amended act empowers district collectors to determine ownership of disputed WAF properties, shifting the decision-making from WAF boards to government officials, and the removal of the WAF by user provision that is seen as arbitrarily excluding potential donors. The WAF Amendment Act has led to unrest in various parts of India. Protests have erupted in regions such as West Bengal's Murshidabad and Tripura's Unakoti, with reports of violence and casualties. The Indian government has filed a caveat requesting to be heard before any orders are passed on the pending writ petitions.
Equally entitled to freedom of conscience and
Let's now take a look at what else is making headlines in the world of politics. In India, Congress party supporters are staging protests across the country against the ruling BJP government a day after top party leaders Sonia Gandhi and Rahul Gandhi were made key accused in a charge sheet filed by Enforcement Directorate. Rahul and Sonia Gandhi are facing allegation of financial mismanagement and money laundering in the National Herald case, while the Congress is accusing the BJP government of political vendetta. The BJP claims Congress is using protests as a distraction from the real issue. Political parties are waiting for elections in Bangladesh, where the interim government led by Muhammad Yunus has promised elections by next June. The country's main political party, BNP, says it is not satisfied with the timeline. A party delegation met Yunus in Dhaka to seek elections by December this year. Ecuador's Electoral Council has dismissed allegations of voter fraud in the recently held presidential elections. Incumbent Daniel Noboa clinched the victory from his rival candidate Luisa Gonzalez. Refusing to accept the outcome of Sunday's runoff, Gonzalez has demanded a recount but is yet to make a formal request to the Election Council. And that's the latest on this edition of Race to Power on WION World is One. Thank you for watching.
The stress of our world can take a toll on our physical and emotional health. Here, in New York's Catskill Mountains, lies a luxurious place of healing called WION Wellness Center. The WION Wellness Center provides 500,000 square feet of natural methods to manage diabetes, hypertension, chronic pain, obesity, depression, anxiety, and other conditions. We use the traditions of centuries-old natural science from India, yoga, Ayurveda, acupuncture, and naturopathy in personalized programs that help you take charge of your own health. A minimum 5-day stay is recommended for best results. Book now at WION.com.
Busting the myths around tokenization. Catch me on Token Money Magnet, only on WION.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide, because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
Welcome back. You're watching WION World is One with me, Raisha Sehgal, and this is Fine Print. Lots lined up for you on the show. Let's get you started with the headlines. Iran is not far from having an atomic bomb. The head of the UN nuclear watchdog says just hours before a visit to Tehran. Israel says it would keep blocking humanitarian aid from entering Gaza as a medical charity says a relentless military offensive has turned the Palestinian enclave into a mass grave. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese promises to defend Australia's interests in its trade tangle with the US in a televised debate ahead of May 3rd national elections. The World Trade Organization says global goods trade is expected to fall by anywhere between 0.2 and 1.5% this year, depending how US President Donald Trump's tariffs play out. Chinese President Xi Jinping urges greater cooperation with Malaysia in the face of shocks to the global order during the Chinese leader's regional tour against the backdrop of a US trade war. Trump administration says it is suing Maine state over participation of transgender athletes in girls' sports. Actions to be detailed by the US Attorney General later today. After a spell of intense heat, Islamabad lashed by heavy hailstorm and rains. Big hailstones damage car and break wind screens. Met Department cautions citizens to remain indoors. Well, the war in Ukraine looks set to escalate again. Sunday's deadly Russian rocket attack on the city of Sumy in northeastern Ukraine has made it more challenging than ever to find common ground between the two sides, that's Moscow and Kiev, to form the basis of a ceasefire or peace negotiations. Our next report telling you more and getting the realities of the battleground.
This is Kherson, where one after the other, 6 explosions reduced entire buildings to rubble. Located near the Black Sea, the city is facing relentless Russian air